Hey, Legal Rebels, this is Tom Martin. I'm the founder of LawDroid, and this is my podcast, LawDroid Manifesto, where I interview legal innovators about how they do what they do. In this episode, I interview Shellie Reid, manager of LSNTAP, whose unconventional path from forensic science to legal technology has made her a champion for breaking down silos and harnessing technology to serve more people in need. Welcome to the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. I'm Tom Martin, your host, and I'm thrilled today to have on Shellie Reid. She is the manager of LSNTAP, and we're going to get into what that means a little later. But Shellie, you're in Virginia. What is it like today?
It is sunny and delightful. We don't have the humidity that we had earlier in the week. Just a great day to be outside. Unfortunately, I'm not.
Well, we will be in a minute. We'll have some time to get out there and enjoy the sunshine. Like the flowers this morning in the front yard were just amazing. I had to snap a few pictures of that just to remind myself of the beauty all around us. But I'm really excited to have you on, Shellie. We've known each other for years, and I've just been so impressed by the work that you've been doing. And it's really been work to help people, which I'm a big fan of. And LSNTAP, if you can just unpack that for us, what does that mean?
So it took me months to be able to remember what all those initials and the acronym stands for. It's the Legal Services National Technology Assistance Project. Even though we've been around for 25 years, we're still a project. So, it's a work in progress.
I mean, from talking with you, there's lots of initiatives, and most of them have to do with like interfacing between legal aid organizations, also like technology companies, and then you even have like a repository of, I think, information of different grants that have been awarded. I mean, lots of work that you put into it.
Our main mission is to provide legal technology education and training to legal aid organizations across the country. Since I've been here, we've added a lot of resources. I call them crowdsourced resources, things like the TIG database, which is Technology Initiative Grants that have been created and in process, over the last 25 years since the TIG grant program was started by Legal Services Corporation. We also have databases that have not been revealed to the public yet, because so many times a discussion comes on our listserv, which is what we're known best for. And, many people present resources and share their knowledge. And we just keep compiling all of these things until we have enough that it's useful. And then we'll reveal it to the public on our website later.
I think it's so great because there are many different silos, especially within legal aid. People have worked on much of the same thing over the years and have put together amazing resources, but then finding them later is a big ask. And so having an organization that's dedicated to kind of organizing that, making and clarifying it, making it easy to get to is really, really worthwhile.
And silos are my biggest pet peeve in this space. There is the legal tech space, there's the legal aid legal tech space, and then there's the corporate legal tech space. And very rarely do you have crossover from one area to another. And you're one of the few exceptions that I know from the legal tech space. We met, I think, initially, maybe through Legal Tech Twitter. It may have been the ATJ Tech Fellows program. But there's very few people that I know from those worlds that are in the legal aid, legal tech world. And I find that very strange.
Yeah, it is strange. I mean, just to explore that a little bit more, it's gotten better over the past couple of years. Like Bob Ambrogi, for example, like came to it's like Muhammad came to the mountain, or the mountain came to Muhammad. He attended the Innovations in Technology Conference. It was amazing to have him cover that because. And also, I believe it was Thomson Reuters that also like had a sponsorship table and co-counsel, like providing some services. So like, there's definitely been a change in the gravitational pull of the Innovations in Technology Conference and kind of the interest in it, right? Because yeah, have
I
you
did.
felt that?
I definitely saw that this year, and I think that is in large part due to the board that Legal Services Corporation has now. Kristen Sonde from Paladin has certainly been an influence in bringing those things to the Innovations in Technology Conference. There is still a huge lack. I think it'll be interesting to see if they return. But yes, it was great to have Bob Ambrogi. This was his second year, I believe, coming to the conference. He was there a year ago for the tech summit that Legal Services Corporation held, and he covered that summit and then went to another summit the next day and did a contrasting article that showed the difference between the two. And I thought that was really great coverage to show that gap.
Yeah, definitely. Bob is and has been the mouthpiece of kind of like putting an eye on things and letting everyone see it, and then it becomes kind of real. And having Kristen involved, she's a force of nature and has done an amazing job. The AI summit was fantastic, and I was very lucky to also get to participate in that. Um, all right, so that's the teaser and preview of what we'll get to later on in this conversation. But as probably everyone who's ever watched one of these interviews knows, I want to go back to the origin story. I want to learn more about you, Shellie, and your roots and how things started for you. So now you're in Chantilly, Virginia, right?
That's correct.
Were you born there? Did you grow up there?
So, no, I was born in Greenville, South Carolina. My parents were at a school there and then moved to Pensacola, where my father grew up. We were there before I was a year old. I'm not sure, maybe 9 months old when we moved back to Pensacola. And I grew up in Pensacola. I also spent a great deal of time at my grandparents' house in southern Alabama, a little town called Castleberry, which is 10 miles from nowhere. So a lot of my summers, well, almost every summer was spent there on the side of the road selling vegetables.
Castleberry?
Castleberry, Alabama. It was at one time was the strawberry capital of the country.
Nice. And I know places like that from having, growing up in California. There's a lot of, the Central Valley in California, and also actually out here in Vancouver, there's a lot of strawberries that are grown out here. But tell us, share a little bit more about that experience. Like, what was that? What was that town like? How many, are we talking hundreds, thousands of people? Like, what was that like?
So Pensacola is a Navy town. So the U.S. Navy is a huge part of Pensacola. My parents both worked at a small private Christian school. My dad was a biology teacher who transitioned over to writing science textbooks. And I was fortunate enough to be the first class of students that used his science textbooks from fourth grade all the way through high school. And I thought they were the greatest science textbooks in the world. Part of writing those science textbooks, my dad knew that he needed to harness technology. So he purchased one of the very first Apple computers. It was the Apple II. And we had that in our home, and he used that to write his science textbooks. And I joke that that is the reason why I still am an Apple user by preference. Even though I am bilingual, I also speak, DOS, not really DOS, but
Basic?
just PC. Mac versus PC. So technology was a huge part of my life. He even had us take programming, very basic programming back, when it first came out. And I couldn't do anything now. If a few years later, I think if I had been a little bit younger, I might have gone on to do programming in school. But because they were very religious, really the only careers available for females were wife, nurse, or school teacher. That was the career path or paths that were laid out for me. I chose to be a bit of a black sheep and decided to go into forensic science. and went to a small school in Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky University, because it was one of two schools that had a forensic science program at that time, college level. And I figured my parents would visit me less in Kentucky than in Miami. So, yes, not probably not the best example to set for children.
Well, I wouldn't say that. You've done some amazing things. But I want to go back a second. Like, so your dad, he wrote the textbook. You actually used that textbook in school. That must have been a pretty cool and unique experience. And so, did he actually teach your class, or he just wrote the textbook on it?
By the time I was in seventh grade, he was no longer teaching biology. He was working full time writing the textbooks. He was a very well known and loved biology teacher, and I think that was his first love. He loved teaching students, and he made science magical. I remember he taught at our church. He would have little science experiments as part of his presentations when he would present his Bible lessons, and it was just magical. I thought he hung the moon, and
Oh,
he made science come alive in all of its forms. And because of that, I also did science projects, as you can imagine, with a science teacher. For a parent, my science projects were always, over the top. And of course, I would also make them over the top because I focused on forensic science. At the time, a big show on television was Quincy, the medical examiner.
right.
And I was enamored with that and all things Sherlock Holmes. I, in fourth grade, I built myself a violin out of a shoebox and rubber bands because I wanted to emulate Sherlock Holmes playing the violin, and eventually went on to study the violin. But yes, science and writing were things that were highly encouraged in our home. My dad was not afraid to use a red pen on our writing assignments, so many of them looked like a murder scene when he was done with them. But it taught me how to write, and that led to things in the future. Before I moved to law, I was able to use writing to provide a little bit of spending money as a military spouse moving around the world.
What was an example of kind of like a magical demonstration that your dad did of science?
He would use the skills to pour one chemical into another and it would change colors. um, but Tom, I think you're asking me to remember way too many decades back as to
Yeah, no,
specific things.
yeah, no worries. I think it's interesting that it's within like the context of like a Sunday school type situation where he's doing science demonstrations, but the two are like they're not opposed at all. Like they're very much um, complementary. Um, so during that time, what were your influences from your mom?
My mom encouraged me to learn home cooking skills, crafts, making crafts, doing crafts was a very big part of our relationship, and probably the only thing that we really did meld on. My mom grew up in foster care, so had a hard time relating to me, who was a very logical and orderly child, as opposed to my sister, who was more traditionally female or feminine. Um, I spent more of my time out in the garage or out in the yard with my dad. I was definitely a tomboy and definitely more interested in building and taking things apart. So my mom and I bonded over crafts and cooking, really, if anything.
Hmm. Well, I know that some of the crafts like has continued because um, just as a side note to the audience, I mean, Shellie, I've been very thankful that she used to send me like a birthday card in the past, and it's very original, made from scratch, handmade, and like really, really, uh, you know, very thoughtful. So, Yeah, I think she's had a great influence there too. Um,
So that could go into past careers, past lives.
yeah, so I do want to talk about that a little bit. So you mentioned Kentucky. You went to Eastern Kentucky University. You got a Bachelor of Science in Police Administration, and so from that, you mentioned forensic science. What did you do at that point? Like, what was your occupation then?
I made the mistake of many young women in Pensacola and married somebody in the Navy. So, so we actually, I did get married shortly after college and traveled the world with my partner. We lived in Japan twice. I've lived in at least 12 or 13 states. I'd have to sit and think about them right now. But we started out in Monterey, California, which was a lovely place to live and see the wildlife. And it was, near farm country. So we also got to go out into the fields and pick artichokes fresh from the field and go to all of the vegetable and broccoli festival and garlic festival and all of the things that area of the country is known for. And it was lovely. Then we moved to Japan. No, we moved to Panama City for 6 months while my husband went to dive school, and then to Japan for the first time. It was a great place to have kids. I had two kids, and I would put one on the front and one on the back, and we would get on the train and go everywhere. And it was a lovely experience. I taught conversational English to many people in the area, and just thoroughly enjoyed being overseas. And then we came back to the States. Where did we go first? I'm trying to think. I think we were in Mississippi. And we came to Virginia that time, and then we went back to Japan to a different island, and was there again for another tour. And I taught craft classes to Japanese housewives, I guess would be the term, and taught at a Japanese elementary school and at a Japanese preschool. And we lived in the same neighborhood where I taught. So everybody knew me. It was like I was a celebrity for the neighborhood almost. It was very hard to come back to the States and just be a normal person again, so that not everybody recognized me everywhere we went. And so as a military spouse, having a career was not easy. My plan had always been to go to law school, and it just wasn't feasible at the time. Now, I think many military spouses have more opportunities. If you're a lawyer and your spouse is in the military, there are agreements in many states that you can practice in those states without taking the bar exam. But at the time that I started out, that was not an option. So I just put that goal aside. And then, with having kids, I, let that go I let that dream go because I had other priorities that I needed to take care of. And then when my kids got out of school, I decided, hey, I still would like to go to law school. So I started investigating that. So in 2017, I went to Michigan State, went and lived in the dorms, which is very unusual. My family stayed here in Virginia and started law school. I think I was 49, so kind of an unusual student.
Well, okay, so let's back up a minute. I want to unpack some of that. So first off, raising a family, especially moving from place to place, and yet, engaging the community and becoming, a celebrity of sorts, and someone that, that people gather around, like that in itself is an occupation, and a very, like, difficult thing to kind of thread the needle of. So that in itself is quite an achievement. I couldn't imagine like moving from place to place to place, and then at the same time, keeping keeping the family together, and all that. That's a big achievement. But you said that, like, finally going to, like, it was in the back of your head going to law school. Like, what made you interested in going to law school?
I just knew that I wanted something different than being a nurse, being a teacher, which I ended up doing anyway, and being a housewife. I had bigger dreams. And I think part of that was my grandmother. She was literally Rosie the Riveter during World War II. She would ride a bus for 2 hours to Mobile, Alabama, and work in the shipyards during the war. And she always made me dream of being more than what I saw around me. She gave the example of welding was hard work. And so she looked around the shipyard and said, okay, well, this is just too much. I want a better job. So she saw the mailman, riding a scooter around the shipyard. And she said, I'm going to get that job. It looks a whole lot better than welding. And so she did. So she became the first woman to ride the scooter and deliver mail and messages around the shipyard. So she always gave me the idea that I didn't have to settle for good enough, right? She made me dream of being the most that I could be. And she always also said, always have money so that you can leave if you need to. Just a very strong person. I mean, she even went on a date the night before she got married to my grandfather. She went on a date with another person just to make sure. So definitely very non-traditional and very encouraging to do more and not just be what I saw modeled around me.
I think that's amazing to have that influence early in life. You don't have to accept the default, right? Like we can
Absolutely.
make our own path in life. So then you go to Michigan State. The great Dennis Kennedy was a guest on the show. I imagine you ran into him once or twice.
We actually had met in Legal Tech Twitter at the time many times and had great conversations. And so when he came to Michigan State in my second year, so I already knew Dennis before he came to the school. And so I knew immediately that I would take every one of the classes that he taught. And they were the best classes because they were non-traditional. They taught actual skills. In his entrepreneurial lawyering class, I left the class with a business plan that if I wanted to do something very non-traditional, I could start the business that I created in his class. And his influence has been overwhelming because he was one of the influences that said that technology could be part of a legal career. And I'd always had a love of technology. We didn't talk about it, but before I went to law school, I was a subject matter expert in a technology software used by police departments across the country to track false alarms. And there wasn't any training available for it. So I, under a pen name, had a website that I would show how to use this software more efficiently. And eventually the company caught on and I got an email, is this you? So I said, yes, it was. And they hired me away to work for them for a short time. So I had worked in technology before going to law school. And
wait. I want to. So wait a second. So you wrote. Okay. So there's a company. So you weren't yet working for the company, right? But you had written kind of like a self-help and how-to for their software.
Correct.
And then somehow they found out this is you, and then they hired you.
They did.
That's an amazing story of like ingenuity, like entrepreneurship. Pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. That's making an opportunity for yourself. Anyways, sorry, I just had to better understand that step. Okay, so then that obviously was a big influence to you. Stuff that you took to heart, and then you made your own opportunities for it. And then when you take Dennis's class and you taking other courses at Michigan State, we're kind of like putting that together.
Yes, and the Access to Justice Tech Fellows program also was a huge influence because I was placed at a legal aid organization to assist with their technology initiative grant project. And I discovered in that placement that technology, in many cases, was an afterthought for legal aid organizations. The answer for many has traditionally been we need to hire more staff. And technology has been overlooked. I think that's beginning to change now, but there are still some organizations out there where the first answer is hire more staff because we have more people to help. And we have to change that. Organizations, legal aid organizations, need to be a business in many respects,
Yeah,
because using efficiencies and using technology can cut costs, can save time, and allow them to help more people with the staff that they already have.
absolutely. And I guess in fairness to the legal aid organizations, you're talking about 7, 8 years ago, right? That yeah, and so certainly like the mentality back then is just throw more bodies at the problem, and it still is. You're to a certain extent right now, but you're right. Things are starting to change, and it's not just AI. It's just like the openness to technology in general, and COVID had an impact on that too. And hopefully, the logjam is starting to break. Um, but okay, so you worked as an Access to Justice fellow, and so how did that experience spur you on? I think, yet again, in kind of like an example of your chutzpah, is with LexBlog. You reached out to them to convince them of the position you made for yourself. Is that right?
That's right. So I had forgotten about that. So, as part of the Tech Fellows program, we were given a blog so that we could document our program and what we did during the summer and answer challenges. And I decided that this was an opportunity, because I had been a blogger in the past, that more people needed to know about this opportunity, because they provided blogs for free to legal school, law school students and professors. And I thought it would be great for people to know about this opportunity. And so, yes, I had met Kevin O'Keefe. I actually had answered on Twitter. He had advertised for a Washington, D.C. law school student to go with him to ILTACon, which was being held at National Harbor. And I responded saying, well, I'm not a Washington, D.C. law school student, but I am still here for the summer because I live here. And I would be happy to go with you to ILTACon and be your videographer. So he allowed me to do so. I guess nobody in a DC law school responded. And so I met Kevin O'Keefe, who is the founder of LexBlog, after having had the blog through the Tech Fellows program. And so I just, with conversations with Kevin, he remembered a time when Michigan State law school students had been very active. And he had actually gone to Michigan State and spoken to the students and worked very closely with the tech club that was on campus there. So he was very adamant about getting the word out about the blog opportunity. And I just convinced him, it's like, hey, let me be your on-campus representative. And so, yes. So that did happen for a few years.
That's awesome. And of course, Kevin's yet another guest that we've had on the show, and he's always been wonderful energy out there in the legal tech space. And yeah, blogging has always been a great way of people getting out there, being their authentic selves and sharing that with the world. You did go to work at a traditional law firm for a little while, right?
I did. When I graduated, I didn't have a job. I was studying for the bar exam, and things were getting not desperate, but I was very cognizant of the fact that my law school loans would have to be paid very soon. So I reached out to the CEO of a law firm in Michigan. I had gone to the firm for a lien and legal workshop, and I had introduced myself while I was in law school. I knew I could not leave that law firm without introducing myself to the CEO of the law firm, just because that was a connection, right? I didn't know if I would ever need a connection at a law firm in Michigan, but I tried to do what I could to network while I was in law school. So I had introduced myself to the CEO, handed over my law school business card, which at the time was a ferret looking out of a computer screen. So it was a very it wasn't going to be forgotten. So, so when I didn't have a job, I actually looked up, and this firm had an office here in Virginia. So I thought, this is perfect. I emailed the CEO and said, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but I would love to apply for this position here in Virginia. And so I applied and was allowed to start working for them while I was studying for the bar exam. So I worked as a paralegal, and that was tough, studying for the bar exam and working at the same time. And yes, so it was, the firm did worked for a mortgage company. So they represented a mortgage company, and I was on the wrong side for me. My heart is representing the people. So I love the experience. It was a great firm. I just knew long term that was not the place for me, because I had more empathy for the people who we were not representing.
Okay. So they did real estate mortgages in particular, and I guess I would imagine like documenting mortgages, maybe foreclosures, perhaps. Yeah.
I was in foreclosure. That was going to be my specialty, and I would be working in DC. And yeah, I think I better not go too far there.
No, that's all right. But
It just, it hurt my heart to see people being pushed out of their home, and the hoops that they had to go through, that the mortgage companies would put them through to keep their home, or to try to keep their home.
Yeah. Just as a footnote, because in California it's non-judicial foreclosures. Do you have to go to court for it? Yeah.
Yes, it's all court based, and it's very one-sided, I guess I could say.
Well, one thing from the experience that I think extremely valuable is the fact that you got like boots on the ground, actual experience working at a law firm, seeing how that works from the inside. And, that definitely informs the whole idea of legal tech, because, if you just approach that in the abstract without having had that experience, it's more difficult to gauge what's practical and useful. So then from that experience, is that when you transitioned to LSNTAP, or was there something in between?
Early in the summer of 2022, Miguel Willis, who is the founder of the ATJ Tech Fellows program, reached out to me and said, hey, you really need to apply for this job at LSNTAP. And so I did, and I'm in Virginia, and LSNTAP is currently housed under Michigan Advocacy Program's umbrella, and they're in Michigan. And I thought, well, there's no chance that they're going to hire me. So I applied, I interviewed, everything went well. And then I didn't hear from them for months. I didn't realize that they were wrangling over the fact that I was in Virginia, and they really did not want to hire someone outside of Michigan, because that requires a lot of paperwork. They have to file with the state and do all of the things like they were a business in the state of Virginia or anywhere. And so, meanwhile, I passed the bar exam for DC, got that notice, and actually was upgraded from paralegal to an actual staff attorney at the law firm and got the message, I think the day after I was promoted, that LSNTAP wanted to have me come. And so it was a very unhappy conversation that I had to have with the firm, but we left on good terms. But it was not my intention to have accepted the full-time job as a staff attorney and then the next day resign. So it put me in a very uncomfortable situation. But I knew that LSNTAP was the right place for me. This position is exactly the position I described to one of my mentors while I was in law school. I was convinced that I would graduate from law school, work for a couple of years, and then go to Legal Services Corporation and convince them to create this position. I had not heard of LSNTAP at the time, didn't know it was available. But once I found out, it mirrors that description that I gave to that mentor almost perfectly. And it's the right place where I can make a difference, use my love of technology, but also use my legal training as well.
When I hear what you're saying, like there's so many examples of kismet, but there's also many examples of created opportunities. And Twitter, like it used to be a bit of a different place, like where you could have these virtual connections with people within this community, and very, very open. I think in a way it's become a little more corporate, a little more well, with Twitter, a little more political, but with all things legal tech, a little more regimented and corporate than it used to be, because the stakes seem to be higher now. But it's really impressive, all of those steps along the way, and then to find a place that's a natural fit. And Miguel Willis, he's amazing, other force of nature, and to connect you with that opportunity. So, what was that like, starting there? What was your assignment when you started?
My assignment was, get to know this and run run LSNTAP, because it was only me. Now we do have capacity for a part-time program coordinator, and I have 2 law clerks. But at the time, there was only me to run the programs, and we use contracted services to help do our educational components. So I have a contracting company that helps create our webinars, or at least some of the webinars. But everything else really was on my shoulders. So it was learning what needed to be done, timing, who needs to be contacted, what needs to be fixed on the website, learning the culture of the legal aid, legal tech space, finding ways to be accepted in the space, even though I am not an IT person by training, finding ways to keep the community that has been built over the last 25 years to stay strong and not make changes that would affect that community and make it less useful for everyone. So it I will say the first year I was learning something every day. And it took a year before I really felt like I can take a breath. I think I've got this under control, or at least somewhat under control. Feel like I had a really good grasp of the whole picture, and I think I started before that. I started doing things like the crowdsourced resources when I saw that there was a need, started creating things in my mind and how can we fit this in? So yeah, it's every day. There's no day that's the same, which I love, because I can think of nothing worse than going to work and doing the same thing over and over again, day in, day out. That would drive me nuts. That's the first way to get me to leave a job, is make me do the same things every day.
Well, I hear you. Same for me. Like if it was an accepting the default job and just showing up and doing, the checklist, man, oh man, can't do that. Um, but it also takes a certain type of personality and history, I think, to, as you have, approach something where who knows what the heck this is and how to figure it out. It's like trying to tame a horse.
Mm. Yeah, I think it does take someone who doesn't need someone looking over their shoulder or telling them how to do something, who's willing to dig in and make mistakes and learn from those mistakes so that things are better the next time around. Someone who is not afraid to experiment. I definitely take those lean principles and failing fast and the lessons that Dan Lina, who was at Michigan State my first year, all of those lessons that he instilled of trying things, experimenting, or even going back to the magic school bus, experiment, make mistakes, like Miss Frizzle used to say. Uh, so yes, and I definitely think it takes someone who is willing to look for opportunities. I when I went to law school, I did not have a social media presence. So Dan Lina encouraged us. The school had a social media contest every year, and Dan Lina just would not let up about taking advantage of this social media contest. So, so for someone who had no social media presence, I signed up for Twitter because Dan Lina made me do it. And because I could use it for the social media contest. And the reason I signed up for the social media contest was because you could win, I don't know, you could win money if you won won the contest. And Access Lex at the time had financial planning seminars at law schools. And one of their first lessons that they pushed to us was that you need to start thinking now about how you're going to pay for the bar exam. So all of that was in there running around. Okay, well, I can make money that can help pay for the bar exam, help my family out because I'm in school, not making an income. Um, so, so just that's within. I think the first week I had Twitter, I saw the Access to Justice Tech Fellows program, signed up for that. So it's not. Some people looking in might say, "Well, you just lucked into everything," but it's not. You have to actually look for those doors, and you have to open the doors. The opportunities don't just happen. You know this, Tom, as an entrepreneur. You have to actually be seeking, and you have to be willing to open the door even before someone's there knocking. So that's I think the kind of person that succeeds in this kind of position is someone who is willing to put in the work without really seeing the long-term benefits, but hoping that they're out there.
That's great, Shellie. What's one initiative that LSNTAP has right now that you're working on?
So our biggest thing is we have redesigned our new logo, and just this week or last week, we unveiled our brand new website. So we're getting that going, and our new forum. So previously our listserv was Google group based, and Google changed their requirements for members of Google groups. And it made us not able to accept just any email as part of our listserv. They had to be related to a Google account in order for us to add them to our Google group. So that is our biggest thing right now, is getting people enrolled in the forum, making it work like the old Google group, where you never actually have to go to the forum if you don't want to. You can get the emails in your inbox and respond to them from your inbox without going to the forum. But if you do go to the forum, there are going to be some extra features. We also will have forum commentary will be searchable on our website, but to see the full content, you have to actually go into the forum. So that is the biggest thing we're working on right now, is just getting all of those little glitches and bugs on a new site and in a new platform worked out.
It's so funny that with all of the different solutions that are available now for group chat or having communities online, like on Facebook or LinkedIn, that for a lot of people, it really comes back to just email, like email lists. Yeah.
They
Um,
have not died, even though the forum controllers, the people who are selling forums try to tell you so. But in many spaces, email is what people are used to, and that's the way they want to continue.
and I think it makes sense. Like I've tried to spin up like a little group. And the thing is that, again, going back to silos, right? Like there's all these little silos. And interestingly, like the email breaks the silo because you have all of your emails to deal with and like it comes to you. You don't have to
Mhm.
like log into some little silo. So, okay, so LSNTAP, great initiative, bringing people together. AI is broken everywhere since November 2022. I mean, before then, obviously, it's been around for years, back to the 50s. We all know the history of it, or read more if you all haven't. But how has that changed things for you? Like, generative AI, ChatGPT, the almost daily, like nonstop information about what it can do. How's that changed your charge with Ellison Tap?
It has just given us a new topic that we have to educate on. And I've told you that the first time you mentioned AI to me back at ITC in January of 2023, I think it was ITC, I rolled my eyes. But then on the way home, I started feeling guilty. It's like, okay, you say you love technology, but yet you just rolled your eyes about a technology that truly could change everything. So that was my guilty moment of letting new technology roll over me and then having to backtrack and realize, okay, you need to rethink this. So definitely educating. We've started out slow. We had an AI basics, what I'm calling AI in a nutshell series, where we just gave the very basics. We discussed ethics. We're actually working on an afternoon of AI coming up on May 20th. And we're doing some programming that is not the traditional, what has been done before. So I'll be doing a demo of Nutshell, Nutshell LM. I can't remember if that's the name. Sorry, I'm having a bad moment of the brain. Notebook LM, sorry. And the other programming is going to be programming that has not traditionally been used about AI, because you can go and find an AI basics webinar. You can find many other things. LSC is now putting on their legal AI lab sessions. I believe there's seven different labs that they're doing, and I'm involved in their AI basics program that's actually starting on May 7th, and it will continue for 5 sessions. So if people are interested in that, they can certainly check on those learning labs. But it is a slow process of education for the legal aid world. AI tools are expensive. And again, that hesitation to spend money on technology is definitely playing a factor. We also have many people who are in the legal aid world who also, because of their socially conscious heart, they're also hesitant to use generative AI because of the environmental costs that are associated with AI. So overcoming those hesitations and just providing the tools. We're working on a toolkit for writing an AI usage policy that will give many different viewpoints so that organizations can choose the viewpoint that best fits and meets their needs. Although I honestly think that you can govern AI usage with a good technology policy. But some organizations feel like you have to have a little bit more, and I think that's fine. Because if you don't tell your staff how to use AI, they're going to use it. shadow IT is a thing, definitely, and people are using AI whether organizations realize it or not. So they definitely need to be aware.
For sure. People need guidance, and it's better to have that conversation than for them to be doing it secretly. I think the initiatives that you have with AI going on and educating people is fantastic. I think actually your initial reaction to AI is a good one because it helps you to see things from the perspective of a lot of attorneys out there that are initially skeptical, and still some of them are skeptical about generative AI and what it could do, what risks it has. So for you to be able to, you know, better understand that point of view is a good one, and I think makes your sharing with them your perspective even more compelling. You know, um,
I think you have to be skeptical of any new technology, honestly, because you have to evaluate, is this actually delivering on the promises that they are making? What are the concerns that you should be aware of in using the technology? So I think skepticism is part of adoption, or should be, I think.
yeah, especially with lawyers. Um, well, let me ask you a couple of questions. Um, the first one, actually both of them I ask of all my guests. And the first one has to do with like you have a lot going on, like you family life, LSNTAP, putting together like this whole thing out of whole cloth. How do you balance it? Like, how do you juggle between these things?
Well, I think, Tom, you're assuming that I do balance. And I would not say that balance is really a word that I would say is in my vocabulary. I I tend to, when I start something, I am all in, and maybe I'm a little obsessive compulsive. So when I start a project, I will be in it till it's done many times. So balance is something that I battle on a daily basis. I I guess I've learned to make choices. I understand that if I spend my time in my office, then my family suffers. So I find ways to do things where I can do what my brain is compelling me to do while still spending time with my family. Like, email is something that can be done while family is watching television, and I'm able to concentrate on email, but my family thinks that at least I'm there in the room with them. um, but it's priorities. How do you balance? And I will say, over the last few months, I am not a good example. My dad has been sick since November. And so balancing trying to help them down in South Carolina with work and personal responsibilities. I've also involved in the Virginia State Bar's Wills for Heroes program. So these last few months definitely have not been balanced. Um, but if I had to give advice, I would say make your priorities and give yourself grace that some things are just going to not be up to your normal standards, and learn how to be okay with that.
I think that's great advice. I love the fact too that, it's not so much about balance per se, it's about the values and principles that you hold and whether or not you're living up to fulfilling them, right? With whatever time we have. Um, so the next question I have is, at the end of the day, doing all of this, what makes it worthwhile for you?
I think what really makes it worthwhile is because it's a challenge. It is using all of the skills from the many different careers. I use quotes on that I've had over the years, reinventing myself every 18 months when we would move, gave me a very weird set of skills that I use every day here at LSNTAP. And being challenged, being able to explore things that are going to help people, that's, I think, what makes it worthwhile. I love that I can affect more people in this position than if I was a staff attorney at a legal aid organization helping a handful of people. I can definitely see the reverberations of programming that I do or the databases that we have created rippling out across the country, and knowing that it is allowing organizations to help more people. I think that's what it boils down to. And that I just love to try new things and experiment. And I'm very thankful that Michigan Advocacy Program has given me that freedom to do new things and to try new things, and are very open to my ideas.
Well, that's great, Shellie. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on the show, Tom.
And for everyone who's watching and listening, how can they keep in touch with you and learn more about LSNTAP?
Well, they can go to our website, lsntap.org. We also, I'm available by email, sreid@lsscm. That's lsscm.org. It's weird. It's a long story. And I am happy. They can also reach out through our website. There are contact us links on the page. But I'm happy to share. All of our programming is available to anyone, and I put those on LinkedIn all the time. I'm on LinkedIn, Shellie Reid, and it's SHELLIE and then REID, just to make it a little more confusing. And I'm happy to help however I can.
Well, thanks again, Shellie, for being on the show.
Thanks, Tom.
And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. See you next time. Thank you so much for watching the latest episode of the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. To keep in the loop about upcoming episodes, please subscribe to LawDroid Manifesto and you'll get notified. Thanks for watching. See you next time.